Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm Mo Wise. I'm on the Education Committee, and we're going to give folks just a couple of minutes or seconds, I should say, here before we start this wonderful program with Tara Christensen, where it's very early in the morning, right, Tara?
Hello from the future.
What does it look like out there?
I know. Guess what? Friday does come. I can promise you. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. The sun has risen. It's great. So
Yay, we have something to look forward to.
exactly. I was going to say, I can tell you, future looks pretty good right now.
Excellent. All right. Well, hopefully everybody is on. It's Thursday here in California. We're joined today by Tara Christensen, who's a former real estate agent from the DC area and followed her passion for technology and now works as a digital strategist for realestate.com in Australia. Thank you. Thankfully, through technology and Zoom, Tara is able to join us all the way from Australia, where if you didn't tune in a few seconds ago, it's Friday at 8 a.m. And as a reminder, if you have any questions for Tara, please submit them in the Q&A section, and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. So Tara, we are eager to hear all about smart home devices and how to stay safe with them. See, I'm already thinking about Friday. So please take it away.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I appreciate having the opportunity to speak to all y'all today. So as Mo said, I do have a real estate background. I was a full-time realtor for 6 years in the DC and Virginia areas before I transitioned to being technology and training director of Century 21 Redwood Realty there. And I did that for 7 years, even after I moved to Australia. I moved to Australia in 2014, kept consulting and speaking about basically anything and everything online because that's what I love. And real estate, I also love that. And so those two passions really combined. And currently that brought me to my current job, which is I'm a digital strategist with realestate.com.au, which is kind of Australia's version of Zillow. So it is 8 a.m. here. It is Friday morning. So, and I haven't had my coffee yet. So if I do miss a word or skip a word or not get the right word, it's because the caffeine hasn't quite kicked in yet. Also, just as a little bit of a warning, I do say y'all and all y'all because I lived in West Texas for 4 years and it has been just trapped in my brain since. So today, though, we get to talk about smart home safety and smart home devices. And there's a lot that's out there, and it's great because I think I first did something like this in 2016. And so the movement hasn't changed that much, and the ideas and strategies behind it hasn't changed much. It's just that things have gotten a little bit smarter and things have gotten a little bit quicker. But first, let's start with the foundation, and that foundation of the Internet of Things, what it is and why it's important. So this is the father of the Internet of Things. His name is Kevin Ashton. And in 1999, of all things, he was preparing a PowerPoint presentation. I'm not kidding. And he was trying to think of a name for that PowerPoint presentation that might explain some of the content, some of the material that was in it, but also kind of really explained some of the concepts that he was trying to convey in that presentation. And so he titled it The Internet of Things, and it's stuck. And so I figured if I was gonna be looking anywhere for a definition of what does an Internet of Things mean, I would start with him. So according to him, the Internet of Things means a whole range of different sensors that are somehow connected to the internet that are gathering information about the real world that can then be made useful in some way. Now that's a lot of words, and that's not always easy for us to kind of imagine, right? But what if I told you that you actually have an Internet of Things device, probably either in your hand or pocket or right in front of you? And that's right. Your smartphone is actually an Internet of Things right there. It has about at least 10 sensors in it, if not more. They're all connected to a network. You can take a picture, upload it, and algorithms identify faces in the picture. They identify locations of where you took that picture. You probably don't go very far without turning on a GPS of some sort. That's network location sensing. all of those things combined basically are part and parcel of that Internet of Things. So when we're thinking about it, we're thinking about what's working in the background that we don't even see, or that we're not always aware of, and that we don't necessarily actually even have to tell it, hey, could you turn on, could you turn off? Like when we don't actually change those settings in our background, they're running in the background for us. And so we have to think about that. What's also interesting is that Internet of Things is really kind of expanded into not just homes, but also into smart cities. So I obviously won't spend a lot of time on this today because that's not the focus of this, but I do want you to think about how cities themselves have started to get smarter, and that's from everything from what police officers may wear to smart trash cans that can even tell what kind of trash you're basically putting into it and can signal to the city too when it needs to be picked up or needs to be changed. There's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes in cities as well that kind of are part and parcel of that Internet of Things. So if you think it's just, oh, it's just this device here or that device there, or maybe it's just a little bit of a gimmick basically that's happening in homes. First of all, I'll tell you it's not a gimmick. It's been going on for quite some time now, but this kind of idea of things being interconnected and also being able to communicate through sensors and through different channels is basically growing and growing and growing. And so we need to think about kind of that wider sphere as well when we're thinking about keeping safe and what's basically recording us, what sensors are out there, etc. And for the numbers people in the crowd, because I know there's always numbers people that are out there, 26.66 billion Internet of Things devices were active in 2019. And they're predicting that by 2025, it'll be 75 billion. Because of the pandemic, a lot of people have actually been investing in more, especially voice activated and automated systems during this time. And so that number may actually change, that number may actually rise. 127 new devices are connected every second to the internet. Isn't that a little bit scary? That was a little bit kind of a wow one for me. And 1.9 billion smart home devices were projected to be sold by end of 2019. And this is a huge profit maker for a lot of businesses, as you may imagine, especially for the top ones. And some of the big ones, especially, are Amazon and Google. This is one of the places that they're making a lot of money. So we have to think about who's behind some of these devices. What are the companies that are running this? What's their end goal with some of this information as well? Because it is data collecting as well as is just, providing a specific service within your home. So you need to think about that too. So what is a smart home? Well, this is another very long definition, but the thing with this is actually from a Coldwell Banker. They did a collaboration with CNET, and if you're not familiar with CNET, it covers basically all things technology, and they collaborated in 2016 to come up with what does a smart home actually mean? What is the definition of it? And it still stands pretty much today. They started out by saying, look, it's a home that's equipped with these network connected products, so these smart products, and they could be connected through Wi-Fi, they could be connected through Bluetooth, and there's other kind of, I want to call them languages. I know that's probably the wrong technical term per se, but it's pretty much like a language to speak to each other. And they control and they automate and they optimize certain functions. And that can be your temperature, that can be your lighting, that can be your security or safety, that can be entertainment. And you can access those things by phones and by tablets and computers. So you don't even have to be home necessarily to access these devices. And then they continued and they said, okay, so to be categorized as smart home, at least according to them, then there was certain things that it needed to include. So it had to have something that either controlled access or monitored the property, or a smart temperature feature, in addition to a reliable internet connection. And it had to have at least 2 additional features in that list. And that was a fairly extensive list, so that could be part of it. So as you can see, these are some of the devices that are there. I will actually start to break down a few more of the most common devices that are there. I think, you know, the smart refrigerators, I think, are a lot of people's favorites. I didn't include it in the slides per se, but that's one of people's favorites because it can signal to you that you're out of milk or that your milk is starting to expire, or maybe you need more vegetables. Thankfully, it hasn't quite started to tell you what your diet is or isn't, and how good it is or isn't, which is probably my fear, I think, with my refrigerator, especially right now. But that's some of the things that it's able to signal. Of course, the dream for a lot of people is when you wake up, it can signal to a coffee pot, and the coffee pot can actually say, okay, the alarm went off, so I need to start. Or 5 minutes before this alarm goes off at 7, I know that I need to start so that there's coffee ready and waiting as soon as this as the human wakes up, basically. So there's a number of different things that are out there that kind of are part of this. And sometimes we actually invest or buy these without even realizing some of its capabilities or some of its connections. So we have to be really aware of that as well. So let's talk about some of those most popular smart devices and what you may find basically as you're walking through homes. So first of all, well, why do people actually buy these in the first place? Because they sound a little bit scary, and you know, we're talking about safety. So obviously there might be some issues here. Well, because there is a time-saving element with a lot of these. You know, you could lock and unlock doors without, so let's say your hands are full and your keys are in your pocket. The door can sense that, you and your phone are there and it's your phone, so I will unlock for you. And so it makes it easier for you. It can be for remote access. So let's say you had a work person working on your house that day, but you couldn't actually be there to let them in. And so you didn't know what to do. You could actually remotely let them in, or you could set remote access for them and then kind of track that they use that specific PIN on a lock, on a smart lock, to access it. So you could also figure out, did they come in and when did they leave? How often did they go in, go out? So how much time were they actually spending in the house? It also can be a virtual assistant. So anybody who's got an Amazon Alexa or a Google Home device knows that you can, you know, use it for all sorts of things, especially with Amazon Alexa skills. So, you know, everything from reading you the paper to the weather to playing podcasts to you can even set it up to access things in the home. You can use it for, like I said, you know, that coffee pot scenario. That's kind of what they call if this, then that. So if this happens, then that happens. So you can set it up so there's a chain basically. So as soon as the car approaches the house, the garage door opens, the lights turn on in specific main areas. Maybe the shutters start to close so that you have more privacy as you're entering. All sorts of things can happen. So you can program it basically. So if one thing happens, then it triggers a whole other part that happens through that. You can save money through these devices. So you can conserve energy. So you can set temperatures or say, hey, look, only when you hit a certain temperature in the home, even if you're not there, it can trigger either heating or cooling for you. It can also raise and lower blinds for you during that time. So, you know, if you don't want your air conditioner running 24/7, you could try to, you know, mitigate some of that by having the blinds closed. And then there's the extra safety part, especially right now, basically. And that's because some of these, a number of these devices are actually also voice activated or have a voice activation component to them. So instead of having to touch things, you don't have to touch as many things anymore. So you're able to actually get the same information or get some of this happening for you without actually having to physically touch things. And so, especially as an agent walking into somebody else's home, knowing that certain things may be able to be voice activated or accessed maybe even through your phone instead, is something that could protect possibly you from having to touch other people's surfaces that you don't know what's been there. So those are some of the ways and some of the reasons that people use these and buy these and invest in these. Now, then there's the other side, which is, well, why wouldn't we want these? And so data collection concerns. So like I said, you know that Google and and Amazon are some of the biggest owners of these devices. And so, you know, thinking about where is all of that information going? How is it being stored? That data security, can somebody access that information? The privacy concerns, so how much do they actually know about you? Implementation, because sometimes it's not exactly easy to find devices that actually talk to each other, especially if they're not in the same, and I'm going to put this in quotes, family, but especially if they're not in the kind of that same family of, if you buy a different brand, for example, you want them to all talk to each other. And sometimes putting it all together actually can sometimes be a bit frustrating if you're not entirely sure what you're doing. Maintenance, keeping them up to date, making sure that they're up to date. We'll talk about why that's important in some of the security concerns and vulnerabilities. And then finally, integration with older tech. So anybody who's had maybe an older TV that you're trying to make talk to a smarter speaker or a newer speaker that's out there probably is familiar with some of this struggle. The integration with the older technology can sometimes be frustrating, and sometimes it doesn't work exactly the way it's supposed to, which isn't necessarily good if it's supposed to be either doing something specific for you, or it's also supposed to be maybe collecting something in the background. So you want to make sure kind of that everything runs smoothly and works the way it should. So let's talk about devices themselves. So what are smart home devices? Well, even according to NAR, smart home devices allow the remote monitor and control of home features. So these are specific standalone devices that you could even just buy one today if you wanted to, without having to kind of have a whole system active in your house. And a lot of people do this, especially if they're buying smoke alarm or a temperature, a thermometer, or, you know, something like that. That's where those devices come through. So the first, cameras, there's a number of different cameras out there. There's the Nest Cam, there's Netgear's Arlo, there's Ring's Spotlight. And these are all very popular home security cameras. They allow you, you know, access so that you can kind of monitor what's going on in the home. Notice how, you know, they're getting a lot smaller. They're getting a lot harder to necessarily detect. So you have to kind of pay attention to kind of what do they look like? Where could it possibly be? Sometimes it's not so obvious that they're mounted in a specific place. So, you know, from a security perspective, from a safety perspective, as you're even walking into a home or even on the outside of a home, starting to pay attention to, if you could put a camera someplace, or where would it be and what would it look like? So there's a really funny story basically about this, by the way, from actually an agent here in Australia. He thought that his seller was monitoring him. And so he kept getting closer and closer and closer to what he thought was the light on the camera so that he could have a few words with the seller, and then he got sprayed in the face by an air freshener. So because it was one of those automatic motion detecting air fresheners. So also be a little bit careful before you put your face right into one of these possible cameras. The next one is doorbells. So these are all kind of shapes and sizes. Some are just so that you know, have a camera component attached to it. Some are more for kind of just a security perspective. A lot of times though, they do have a pinpoint camera of some sort. There's Arlo, there's Nest, there's Ring, there's Vivint, V-I-V-I-N-T. And if you're a renter, or if you work with renters of any sort, and the landlord isn't so happy about possibly maybe doing physical installs of doorbells, there's also something called Remo Plus, R-E-M-O Plus, and it's a door cam that actually sits on top of a door instead. So it doesn't necessarily have to be installed. So, you know, those are some of the options that are out there. And again, these are all different kind of things to kind of think about. What are the, you know, what does it look like when you approach the door? Do they seem to have something that looks kind of like one of these devices on it? And then, you know, knowing kind of what the different attributes are and what it can access. As you notice, a lot of them have speakers as well, so people can talk to people through it and also hear as well. And I'll talk about what that means a little bit later on. The next one, door locks, smart door locks. These, it's funny because actually my parents have even installed these in their condo in Florida because it's just easier for them than struggling with a key lock. They have a push code lock instead. And you have different kind of ones that are there. Again, some of these allow you then to actually, create specific pins, and you could even do pins just for a specific time period that you created. So you say, okay, I've got a work person coming through, but I only want them to have access on Tuesday. If they try to come back on Wednesday when I'm not there, I don't want them to have access. So you could actually prevent that. So that's really nice, especially in real estate. Maybe you've got a home or an empty home that you're trying to get tradespeople through. So, giving certain people specific access as well. And so you can create different pins for those people as well. So you can kind of monitor and track that. Then, as you notice, some have that physical lock component with it as well. Sometimes that's an extra part of it. And sometimes that's if something happened to fail for whatever reason with that PIN code or with that keypad, then you'd still be able to access the property. One of the biggest kind of ones in the door lock space is Schlage, and I'm probably saying that completely wrong. SCHLAGE. They make a whole kind of like variety of these, and they've been around for quite some time now. So they've just been innovating and innovating and innovating. Another one is Level Lock. And the third one to recommend would be August to look for. So those would be kind of the top three that I would be looking for. Then light switches and electrical plugs. So it can be something that's on the wall, or it even could be something that you plug a lamp or anything else into. And so there's, and that can, like I said, it can trigger things. So even if you've got just a regular lamp, if you put it into a smart plug, you could have it turn on or turn off depending, even from, your desk at home, oh, I'm going to be later than I thought I would be. So I should have some light on in the house when I arrive, or I really want people to think that somebody's there already. You can turn those on and off from there. You could also kind of program them similar to those little, timers that you used to put on lights and things. You can actually kind of have this as kind of the next level, the next sophisticated version of that. And light switches are similar. So, it allows you to control levels of lighting. You could have mood lighting, you could have different colored lighting. So there's different kinds of things that you can do in conjunction with the light switch. And then of course, smart light bulbs, which is the next one. And Philips probably is the most well-known one. Philips Hue, H-U-E, is probably the most well-known smart lighting system that's out there. Ring also does have some. There's one called Wyze, W-Y-Z, or Z, sorry, that's the Australian, W-Y-Z-E, and then Sengled, S-E-N-G-L-E-D. All of them have different, now the thing to pay attention, especially with these, is how do they, what's the fitting basically of that light bulb? Will it actually fit into some of the sockets that you want? So you may envision, it'd be great if we just actually kind of just adjusted this a little bit and had a few smart light bulbs in here, but you need to make sure, of course, that it actually works in the home. Media streaming services, so anything from Amazon Fire Sticks, Chromecast, Apple TV, Roku's, those kinds of things. The good news is that unless you're selling something fully furnished, there's less of these that usually stay with a home. So I wouldn't be as concerned with this necessarily, but just in case you do sell something furnished, or maybe with a TV that's still left on the wall, just knowing whether or not there's a device that's actually still attached to it. A lot of times it's through the HDMI ports in the back of the TV. So just knowing that it's there. Sensors. So this is kind of more that safety side of things. So doors, windows, motion sensors for especially outside, even garage doors can have these. There's Netatmo, N-E-T-A-T-M-O, door and window sensors is one of them. That's the one that you see on your screen right now. Signet is another one. Philips has it. Samsung also does through their smart things. And this again is just a nice, it's an indication that it's opening, it's closing. Now from a real estate perspective, especially if you've got an open house, Knowing that these are there, but also knowing if you've got access to them, then you'd be able to tell, is somebody opening a back door that you weren't aware of, or has everybody kind of come through the front door, or is somebody trying to come through the side door. So there's a number of ways actually that this can actually, if you have access to that information, can actually start to kind of help you in that safety space as well, especially when you're holding open homes or perhaps have an empty home to show. Smart speakers. These are very, very common, probably the most common one that's out there. So the Amazons, the Echoes, the Google Homes, the Sonoses, even Harman Kardon's got a smart device called the Citation One. There's so many smart speakers out there. The good news is that it's not something necessarily used per se to listen into people, unless it's one of kind of the more sophisticated speakers, like or a video speaker similar to so like a Facebook portal, or I think the Echo Show is another one that's out there where it actually has a screen so you can have face-to-face conversations with people. Just take note that they're in the room, and we'll talk about just kind of why you want to kind of pay attention to these. Smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, Nest Labs, Roost, First Alert, all of these are kind of the most popular ones. They're popular especially because the smoke alarms, if you're, let's say, searing something or cooking something and your alarm goes off, you can actually tell it, look, it's me, it's not you, it's okay, and you're actually able to trigger it. So that's a very popular feature for people. The big thing with these is especially knowing how they're attached. Do they convey? And also, you know, is it battery? Is it wired through the house? Those kinds of things. These are kind of the things you really, I mean, you'd want to know anyway with your smoke alarms, but especially with the smart ones. Sprinklers. Did you know that sprinklers are actually smart? There are a lot of smart sprinklers that are out there. Rachio, R-A-C-H-I-O, Rainbird, Orbit, they have a beehive, but it's not, it's B-H-Y-V-E instead. Those are all smart sprinklers that are out there. So those, so even when you're out looking at people's yards and things, think about, do they actually have a sprinkler system? And is it something that they can still access? You know, how does it get accessed? Who has access to that? Is it on a setting that you can adjust? Those kinds of things. Finally, window blinds. So I love this feature. I would love to have smart window blinds. I've actually started to see developers put these into units where they're trying to attract an older clientele, so that somebody can basically walk in and instead of, you know, the old school clapper, is that they actually can, you know, say lights on, and Alexa can turn the lights on, and they can say window shades up or window shades down. And so the shades raise and the shades lower. And as an older person, especially, you know, that's a nice feature basically to have in a home. You can also have it set so there's sensors that say, hey, they haven't left this room in a specific time. And so, you know, maybe they should be checked on right now. So Somfy, Soness is one, Lutron has Serena, and yes, even IKEA has smart blinds that are out there. I don't know if they come flat packed. I'm kind of curious, but I don't know if I'm curious enough to actually go and explore that. So just be aware that those are there. I think it's a really cool feature, but the thing again is, are they taking it with them upon the closing of the house, or are those staying? And if they're staying, does everybody know how they work, how to use them, those kinds of things. From smart home hubs, so we talked about devices. They all need to be controlled. If you want to have a number of these devices all controlled by one system, that's a smart home hub. And hubs manage disparate functions through one centralized interface that can be accessed on a user's smartphone or tablet. Now, again, that's according to NAR. You probably are kind of familiar with these already, but things like that Echo Show, you can actually have it set up so it accesses more than one smart device. Google Home and Google Nest is another one. Philips Hue Bridge, so especially for all of that lighting and some of the other sensors and things that they have on the market in that smart home. And then Samsung SmartThings is another very popular one. Notice what they look like. They're very kind of innocuous looking, aren't they? And so just even being able to visually identify some of these that are possibly in the house as you're walking through will be able to help you understand what maybe questions you might need to ask them, or that, you know, okay, so we need to get a little bit more serious about this. Oh, and the final one is Wink. It's funny because a lot of people love this system, but they got really mad because they've just started a $5 per month subscription for this service. And before it wasn't, and they're not supporting any devices of people who don't agree to pay that ongoing subscription. So people are a little bit upset about that. So if you look these up on the internet, you'll see a lot of bad reviews. That's where those bad reviews are coming from. It's actually a very popular system from before. And this one's pretty cool. This one's 7 Hugs Remote. This actually allows you the access of that whole smart home basically from the palm of your hand. So this was meant to kind of simplify that whole smart homes experience. So again, is this something that your sellers are using? Is it something maybe that you want to familiarize yourself with if you were trying to give some feedback or some suggestions to buyers? These are just things to kind of keep in mind as well. I will make these available as well to Mo and the rest of the OC Realtors, but all of these links in this presentation, but gearbrain.com has some really great kind of collection where it tells you, hey, here's all the devices that work with Google Home. Here are all the devices that work with Amazon Alexa. And since those are the most popular ones, that would kind of help you also kind of start to familiarize yourself with some of the other devices that are out there. So we talked about the fun stuff, the cool stuff, the shiny things that are out there. But let's now talk about some of the vulnerabilities that are out there. So the first one is open networks. And open networks is what basically happens if somebody hasn't changed the passwords since that device or the hub was bought, or they haven't changed passwords on their Wi-Fi network, or they haven't changed passwords for a long time in their Wi-Fi network, or it's a very common password that's easy for people to get into. Open network just means basically almost anybody can access it. So think about like when you walk into an airport or into a Starbucks and you are able to attach to their Wi-Fi immediately, that's a more open network. And that's why, you know, that's why it's always been advised, you know, if you're in those situations to not have, you know, financial information open or any kind of confidential business information open when you're attached to those kinds of Wi-Fi's, is because it's easy for people to, or easier for people to access other people's information basically when it comes to that. So that means then that they can also access information on these devices instead. The next one is old firmware. So stuff that hasn't been updated in a while. So you know how your phone updates every so often? And yes, I know it can be very annoying, and same for your computer. It's because it's putting in like security patches. It's trying to kind of keep things up to date. So, you know, they'll have, oh gosh, there's a bug or somebody tried to hack something, so we will fix it, and then we will push that fix out to everything else. It's the same with these devices. And if these devices haven't been updated in a while, then they don't really basically have the most up-to-date security that's there. Or sometimes some of these companies actually go out of business, or they stop supporting specific devices. So if it's an older device, they may stop supporting it because they want you to go buy a new one instead. So you need to know also kind of like, what's the age of it? Is it something that's still usable? Is it something that can, you know, basically that you can still access information for. And the reason is because, again, this is kind of an open door for a lot of people who might be trying to access information from the outside instead. Unsafe passwords, just in general, simple, easy to use passwords or passwords that they've used on multiple accounts. And it kind of goes into that open network space, but it's also just even for Wi-Fi situations. So if, let's say, the seller for whatever reason gave you their password and it's like 123 or password 123, that's not a safe password. And so, you know, you need to kind of, if they're going to give you that information in the first place, which they may or may not, but if they give you that information in the first place, you know, just sit and think, is this going to be really good or not, basically, at the end of the day. Incorrect setup is another one. So they may have thought that they set it up right, but they didn't. And if one device gets compromised, so if one device isn't set up correctly, or if one device gets hacked when it's connected to all of these other devices in the home, it actually allows the attacker to plug into the entire network instead. Again, creepy. So it was interesting because I was just reading something as I was getting ready for this about a coffee pot. There was a coffee pot that hadn't been updated, a smart coffee pot that hadn't been updated, and they were able to access all of the devices in the home, the smart devices and on the home network, basically through the coffee pot. So yes, your coffee pot may be your betrayer. So just think about kind of, is it set up correctly? Are those open networks there? Those kinds of things. Here's why. Shodan is one of them. The other one is Instacam. These are just some of the sites that you can find actually on Google. This isn't even the dark web stuff. These are where you can access other people's webcams. These are where you can actually start to see through TVs, through refrigerators, through cameras, through all kinds of places. Like these are the ones that are not protected. So these are the webcams that are not protected that are out there. So there are websites out there where you can actually sit and access them even from your home right now. So being aware that those are out there, that one, and like I said, there's a bunch of other ones. I wouldn't necessarily go playing on these because, you know, you don't know who owns them and you don't want to click on any crazy links. But just like being aware that, you know, this is what happens basically, that there are actually collection services and aggregators that will help point people to cameras, to places that that aren't protected and aren't safe. So if you're thinking, oh, it's just, you know, one specific hacker or things like that, you don't know. You don't know where they're coming from. You don't know how they stumbled upon it. And you don't know what they're necessarily listening to. So there's a lot of things to really think about from that space. Now, for a seller side, what you should ask them and how you should improve security. Get legal advice first, because California is actually one of the first states to approve a new cybersecurity law about connected devices. And it's from the manufacturer standpoint of that, you know, there's certain features that need to be with those devices to prevent some of that access, that modification, those kinds of things. So just learning more about that, because I'm not familiar with California law per se. So, you know, making sure that you're familiarized with how that may pertain to some of the equipment that might be in your seller's home, some of the devices that might be in your seller's home, especially if they are conveying that across to somebody else at the end of sale, just so that you're kind of aware of what things you might need to do from a legal liability standpoint. I'm only from the nerd standpoint, not from the legal liability standpoint. So from the nerd standpoint, here are some of the questions to ask sellers. What stays? What goes? What are you going to take with you? And what is going to be staying here? And then, are there any warranties or other policies with the device? So is it covered by anything? Are those things that we're going to need to transfer over to a buyer at the end of the day? Are they transferable at the end of the day? Those kinds of things you'll want to know. Do you know how to reset them all to factory settings? And do you know how to check that it's been done afterwards? And sometimes you may need help with this. I'm hoping that more home inspectors are starting to familiarize themselves with this and including this as part of their inspection. But even if not, knowing how, like, what devices they are, how did you reset them to the factory settings, and how do you make sure that that's actually been done so you know that you're delivering it basically out of box as you hand it across. Explaining what the device is. So have them explain what that device is and what it does, as well as, are there other benefits that you want to know about? Like, so, you know, this has helped me save money on my power bill by X amount over the past year because I've put this into place. This is good for you to know because this is good, obviously, language for you to be able to use in your own marketing, but it also kind of helps you better understand what that device can do. How is it connected? Is it through that Bluetooth? Is it through Wi-Fi? Is there a different way that's there? What happens when the power goes out? So does it need to have access to an electrical source per se? Does it have a backup battery? What if that battery dies? This is especially important for, let's say, smart locks and those kinds of things. So if there's a smart lock on the home or a smart doorbell on the home, what happens if the power source for whatever reason isn't there anymore? Are they paying a subscription for any of these services? Because some of these services do require a subscription, especially for like saving video for a while or any of those things. So you need to think about, are there subscriptions that go along with that? What's the Wi-Fi connection like in the house? What's the speed? Is there a specific range? Do they find that maybe one room's a dead room? Is it fairly stable? Does it seem to be fairly okay? Larger homes sometimes have Wi-Fi issues. Older homes that have thicker walls and construction might need extra things for that, or they may have put more things into place. So there's something called a mesh network that works with, especially like Google Homes, that kind of sits over the entire house like a big mesh net. Network extenders that people use. So you want to know, are they kind of trying to bump their Wi-Fi in specific places so that you kind of know, will the device basically work in here? Will the Wi-Fi work in there once the seller's out of the house? What's the age of the home? So have there been any renovations that add thickness or change the wiring in the home? And wiring, especially, things to think about, especially with doorbells, wall switches, smoke alarms, those kinds of things, knowing whether or not that's going to affect that moving forward. And do any of the devices also hold a SIM card? So a lot of these devices use the cloud to store information or provide information up, but sometimes they also have a SIM card that's in there. So in case, let's say, the power does go out, that it still collects information. The thing is, you want to know, is that SIM card there? Do you need to like take that SIM card out and give that to the seller at the end of the transaction and put a new SIM card in for the new buyer? What is it that you need to do basically with that? So how do you improve security? So buy known brands. There's a lot of like new ones that kind of come up. The only problem is sometimes they stop supporting, or they stop updating their security, or they go out of business, and that kind of can really prevent basically things from happening that you want to happen. Keep updating it, of course, changing those passwords, encouraging strong passwords with the Wi-Fi, as well as, if possible, two-factor authentication. That means, you log in here, or you put your password in, but then it also pings you on your phone, and it, requires a second, basically, authentication through your phone. Making sure no one else can access it. So who has access to this in the first place? Have you given your Wi-Fi password out to every single person who's walked through the house, or who's stayed at the house? So guests may have had access to the Wi-Fi password at some point in time, which means they may have access to some of the devices on that network as well. So thinking about that. If possible, keep the devices on a different part of the network. So instead of being just the Wi-Fi that everybody taps into to play games and read and surf the internet on, having it on a separate part, or having a separate kind of network that's there just for the devices, can kind of help prevent some of those security challenges there. Knowing that devices will fail. It's just like any other piece of technology. Sometimes they just don't work, or they stop working. And sometimes, yes, it is as simple as, turning it off and turning it back on again. But sometimes more things have to happen. Just plan for it, so you don't just rely basically on that one device for whatever it is. And then finally, knowing the line between convenience and security. Being able to balance basically that line between the convenience and security is important. So just a few security tips when you're showing or selling a smart home. Knowing where those devices are. And then making, of course, anybody else who walks through the home aware of the devices that at least you know about. And of course, if they're conveying, explain the benefits of them. So, here's why. Here's why they were installed. Here's what they do. Here's the great reason for that. And so you're kind of subconsciously telling them, and it adds value to this. Being aware of what devices may be recording video and or sound in the house. This is so important these days. Those conversations that you may have with people in open homes, or that you may have during showings. Just pretend basically that you are always, always, always being recorded, either on video or sound, even though it may be illegal. Just know that it may be happening anyway. And so act accordingly. That's the final, thing. Act as there's a device in every room. Just basically pretend that there is, even if you don't see one. And even if they haven't disclosed that there's one. Don't connect to a seller's Wi-Fi without knowing more about it. Like I said, knowing if they've given that password out to 60 million other people, or whether it's just a really horrible password that they've had forever since setting it up. There's something called virtual private networks that are out there, so that allow you to, you can kind of change your IP address, so you kind of, it looks like you're coming from a different source, basically. So that's one of the ways. ExpressVPN is one that I've used in the past, that's been very useful. And then self-service with the Wi-Fi turned off. So just not even allowing access to Wi-Fi. And one final thing is especially remembering that doorbells and a lot of these sensors have a really good range on them. Some of my friends, including some California agents, have been had their sellers send them video and audio recordings of people discussing the house out on the porch after showing it, or after walking through it, or out in the driveway even. So there's a fairly significant range when it comes to that, listening into that video. So also being aware of those conversations that you may have. Maybe you're negotiating something, do it away from basically anywhere that it might be heard. And the final one is, I found this, which I thought was a fairly good start for a smart home checklist. So it's found at otalliance.org/smart home. And it gives you a nice smart home checklist that's there. And that can be a nice start for you as you're going through, as part of basically your process when you're having that discussion with your sellers. But thank you for your time today. I do appreciate it. And if there were any questions, then I'm happy to work with Mo to field those. So thank you.
Thank you, Tara. That was wonderful. So I made a couple of notes here. Things that you mentioned: 127 new devices connected every second. That's crazy.
It's crazy, isn't it?
I love the smart home checklist. I think that's a really great thing, and I'm glad you're sharing your information with us, because I think it would be very helpful to the agents here. The search engine for webcams, kind of scary.
It's creepy. It's really creepy.
I'll tell you, the one thing that I need is that smart smoke detector for my cooking. Let me tell you. Although it might annoy some of my neighbors.
It's so helpful, though. I will tell you, especially if you cook meat or anything else like that, that normally sets it off, you can be like, it's just me.
Hopefully it doesn't answer back and go, oh, again?
Yeah, exactly. Trying to cook, I see.
Exactly. I got a couple of questions here for you. First question is, what are the suggested VPNs that you mentioned?
So the one that I'm most familiar with, and that's just because I've used it the most, is it's called Express, EXPRESS VPN. You can use it on your computer. You can also download it for your mobile devices as well. I use it a lot actually when I travel too. I also use it honestly to get access to American Netflix when I'm over here. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use that, but it's good even when you're like in a hotel situation, or you have those open network situations that I was talking about earlier, to be able to just jump onto that instead, or use that as you're kind of accessing the web. So it's not just when you're in that seller's home, but other places as well.
Awesome. The rest of the comments here are all thank you, super interesting, great information. Wow, thank you, great information.
Cool.
Great job. So we want to thank you, Tara, for joining us today on your Friday morning, giving us insight to the pros and cons of these smart home devices. It was really eye-opening. It was great.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
For everybody else out there, we hope you enjoyed this session, and we'll tune in tomorrow at 10 a.m. for our finale of Virtual Safety Week, as our panel of experts talk about personal protection. So we'll see everybody tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.